Very special guest, third all-time in wins at Southern University football, and we know him also well. Former head coach here and at Norfolk State. My man, Coach Dawson Odums. Good morning, Coach.
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing good. Turn him up just a little bit for me. There we go. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, man. Just excited for another opportunity to be on this side, man. Just enjoying life and looking forward to what's next.
Man, I'm glad to have you on, man. And as we look forward to what's next, right? Something that came out this week, of course, that you know well, and I thought nobody better to talk about it than somebody who had to deal with it here at Southern. APR, Academic Progress Report, that comes out in terms of measuring the graduation rate of student athletes in particular programs, right? And this week we saw some programs be affected by it. Southern on this side of things, no issues. All right. We've seen the days of the issues, but Southern good. But there are other programs that are dealing with issues. But before we even get into those issues in those programs, I want to talk to you about the APR because in this ever-changing world of the transfer portal where guys are leaving to go here, leaving to go there, at some point you would have thought we would have to rewrite this, look at this differently. But your thoughts on looking at just the perspective of APR being measured in this world of players being able to jump ship at any given time right now?
Well, it's definitely challenging. And let's start by just really, real quick, just explaining what APR is and what it stands for. You get 2 points for each young man or young woman that's on athletic scholarship. Okay, you get a retention point and you get an eligibility point. So each semester, so at the end of a year, that person gets 4 points. The way you lose points is if a player transfers and say that player doesn't have a high enough GPA, okay, that player is not coming back. So you lose a retention point. When players become ineligible, you lose an eligibility point. So when you got 75 guys on scholarship as you look at football and that's on athletic aid, each one of those guys carry APR points. So you take your entire team and you factor in how many points you lost and divide that into the maximum number of points that you possibly could have attained. And then that tells you what your APR score is for that year. So semester by semester, the academic people are staying on top of what the APR is and so forth. So now that we have a good understanding that each semester we get 2 points per individual and a 4-point total for the year, now you're starting to see how those points can add up and how you can lose those points. But the biggest thing and the challenging thing is that you got guys that transfer, you got guys that become ineligible. You got guys that come in thinking they're engineers, thinking they're business majors, and they don't do well in those majors. And then all of a sudden they have to change. When you change, you got to have so many classes going towards your degree. They got to be evaluated each semester so that at the end you can say, okay, you got to meet progress towards the degree. And that's after your sophomore year, 40% of your classes have to be going towards your degree, 60% after 6 semesters, and 80% after 8 semesters. If you're not able to meet your progress towards the degree, then you're ineligible, and therefore you lose eligibility points. So it's challenging and it's tough, but that just gives you an overview of what APR is.
And the way APR is being measured in this world that we live in today at the transfer portal, do you think that, how should I ask this? Is APR still should be a relevant thing, which I think is needed, but how do you measure it with the guys transferring in and out, going to 4, 5, 6 programs?
Well, I think when you look at the overall landscape, we're still academics. And academics is always going to have some kind of measuring stick of what eligibility look like. Even though you have the transfer portal, you have guys coming and going. The biggest thing is that they've altered some of those rules. That your GPA is at a certain requirement when you leave, then you don't lose any APR points for that individual. The school takes on the responsibility of that guy once he gets there. So You want them to leave you want them to leave eligible and good standards and at a good GPA so that you're not held liable for that guy and you lose retention points. The biggest thing is when they become ineligible, like when you take 1 year guys that already have a degree. That's my biggest discrepancy is that you got guys transferring, they got 1 year left. They got 1 year left for eligibility. They come in and they don't perform well. They don't pass, so they're not eligible. And you lose those points. You lose 1 point for eligibility, and now all of a sudden you got 4 or 5 guys on your roster that are 1 year guys, and none of them perform well in the classroom because most of them already have degrees. So that hurts your APR. So I think coaches got to look at what they're bringing in and how that's going to affect their APR. And when you look at who's posting and who's releasing APR, it's quite ironic that it's usually our HBCUs that are facing these types of penalties. You don't really hear about APR from PWI. So we have to do a great job of understanding that it's still there, it's still present, but I think the NCAA is still trying to figure out a way how we're going to do APRs to continue to move forward.
And a lot of people had this thought that, when COVID happened, that it was kind of, oh, this is not going to count here. That's not going to count there. What ended up happening with that whole notion that things weren't going to count towards APR once COVID happened?
Well, they gave you some years where they were lenient and wasn't really pressing with APR because they understand people were coming out of COVID. So some of the resources just weren't there. You was doing online school. You didn't have the tutoring. You wouldn't have the face-to-face. So we was at a time where things were just different. And those years have fallen off now. So now you're starting to look at all the years APR taught now are the years that are after COVID. So we're talking about the cohort, which is 4 years. So we're talking about 21, 22, 23, 24. This is the first 4-year cohort after COVID. So now you're starting to see a major difference in where we are and where we need to be as it relates to getting that 930 score. That's the benchmark. 930 is where you want to be so you don't receive any penalties. And we're starting to see some of those penalties as you look at social media as it relates to APR. It's tough. It's tough, but they're still lenient because they know that 4-year cohort is still coming out of COVID. That's why you're not seeing a whole lot of people receiving, what we had to endure for 4 years at Southern, which was a difficult time because, we lost scholarships over 5 scholarships a year every, for 4 years and never had spring ball. So, those were challenging times, but we were better through those times and we was able to figure it out and we left it in a better place than we found it because the APR was steady constant. That's what it got to do. You got to stay above that 30.
My man, Coach Odums, former Southern University head football coach, as well as Norfolk State head football coach, having a conversation about APR. Good morning, Coach.
Hey, man, how's it going? Everything's rocking and rolling.
Man, glad to have you on this morning as we have this conversation. And we're talking about APR, the Academic Progress Report, which over the past 15 years, HBCU programs have seen an improvement over APR performance. And we're looking back to 2009 to 2010. The average APR for an HBCU team was 911, Coach. But then you look now, it is steadily rise. It is 967 in 2023 and 2024, showing a real progress. But then you look at non-HBCU Division I programs that have consistently averaged around 980 or higher in APR, looking at eligibility and retention. Looking at the disparities right now, 24 of 49 teams that fell below the 930 APR benchmark were HBCUs. 49% of the total, even though HBCUs only represented 5% of Division I teams. 67% of level 2 penalties were applied to HBCUs, and 43% of level 1 penalties were assessed to HBCUs looking at these issues. Now, 3 teams from the SWAC that dealt with APR, Florida A&M, in terms of football, the APR score posted was 911. They have practice time reduced. Mississippi Valley, their APR score was 904. They have practice time reduction along with a postseason ban this year. And then the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff, who posted an APR score of 914, they also have practice time reduction along with postseason ban. Looking at that, and then I look over in the MEAC, most of the MEAC programs were above 930, including North Carolina Central at 958, Howard at 957, and Delaware at 947. FAMU, Valley, and Pine Bluff. Now, I'm still wondering, how did FAMU come out with 911 with no postseason ban but practice time reduction? But those three programs, you know well because you had to deal with this at Southern. What does the future look like this season with those programs having to deal with that reduced practice time, and it's for two other programs postseason ban?
Well, it's going to be challenging because that negativity also hits social media. So now with recruiting, people are going to look at that as you're not taking a higher level of importance to academics. And it's going to be challenging because once you get that negativity out there, it's hard to overcome it. And everybody got to get on the same page and put a plan in place to be able to say, how can we come through this on the other side? How can we go through this adversity and be better on the other side? We got to put different plans in place. You got to change your recruiting because you got to recruit higher academic guys. And that's the biggest thing that you just got to say, that we got to change. If we want better, we got to do things differently. And like you said, we went through that and we made some changes. Dr. Scott, Carmen King, Anjanae Dillon, people that really was hands-on with that for us when we was going through that at Southern. We was able to turn that thing around. But it's not just this year. So you're looking at maybe this year's scores from 24, but it's a 4-year cohort. When that 4-year cohort is under 930, that's when you're gonna get hit with sanctions. So you say why FAM may have had a 914 or whatever their score was, and they didn't get postseason ban. Well, they could have had 930, they could have had 940, and they could have had a 920, and it wasn't 4 consecutive years of a bad cohort. Well, where the other schools could have had just 4 bad years in a row where they wasn't over 930. And that's what happened to us at Southern. We had a 4-year stretch there where our APR was really low. We got probably the toughest penalty that I've seen ever given out, and still had winning seasons during those 4 years of trouble and trials that we had as it related to APR. You had postseason ban. You had practice reductions. You had no spring ball. So you don't see that too much anymore. I think we were the first to receive, quote unquote, life support. It wasn't a death penalty, but we was on life support. and just putting our heads together and having great people around you and just believing in you that you can help them and you believing in them that they can help you. And we was able to come through that thing on the other side and, again, left it better. And it was tough. It was tough when you got to go through that. I remember telling Austin Howard that, Austin Howard graduated from Southern University as a starting quarterback, record holder, and he never had a spring ball. I wonder how good Austin Howard could have been had he had spring ball. That entire class didn't have spring ball.
Yeah, Lenard Tillery, Danny Johnson.
Lenard Tillery, Danny Johnson, Aaron Tiller. Those guys, those guys never had a spring ball. We had to go out and do like OTAs and do, mat drills and all those things, but we weren't able to go out and put pads on in the spring. So they went through 4 years of that. And it's a testament to the coaches that we had during that time. It's a testament to the players we had during that time. Just having a mindset of not allowing those things to affect you. But the biggest thing was the support we had around us. From Coach Banks and his staff, and as it became down from everybody, man, every administrator that was there, the academic support, everybody just got on the same page and said, you know what, we're going to fight this good fight together, and this is what we're going to be able to do. You can't do this, but you can do this. And we put plans in place, and we were able to come through on the other side.
And I have that conversation all the time with people when I go back to those years, because I said, I don't think y'all really understand for the success that you had here, what you dealt with during that time. Because, of course, the fans, They're not at practice. They're not looking at you in the spring until it's time for the spring game, and they're waiting on the first game. But to understand, when you hang that helmet up at the end of the Bayou Classic and you're not able to get that helmet back with those players officially until fall camp, what that really does for, because there are plenty of programs where that's almost like you said, like a death penalty. It's like, how do we do this? And then the issue with not being able to get the transfer portals everybody wants you to go get. And then the issue is the dogs, as Coach Prime say. Everybody wants you to go get the dog, but you had to go get the kid that was good in the classroom and develop them up on top of the preferred walk-on program that you had that became successful here. I think that whole system that you guys put in place, and then to have Southern each year still competing for a SWAC championship. It was, other than that 15-year where we lost 3 games, what was it, to Prairie View, Alcorn, and Grambling, you still had a winning record in the conference. And then 16 and 17, it came down to the Bayou Classic. 18-19, it came down to the Bayou Classic. So you were still in the conversation, but I think you guys made it look so easy. People did not truly understand how the depths of what APR and the sanctions and the penalties that the NCAA brought down on Southern. I don't think the fans out there truly understand, Coach, what you guys were dealing with internally in terms of the NCAA and those penalties.
Yeah, they might not understand, but inside that foxhole, it was a pressure cooker because you was not able to recruit, man. The recruiting part and the job that the staff did in recruiting, knowing that we had all these sanctions, knowing the media was beating us up, like they don't take education serious. Why would you go to Southern? You know, you got to go sit down with these parents and these young men and try to convince them that this is our plan, this is what we're doing. We're concerned about your young man getting a degree, and just getting these guys to come and trust in us, because there was no trust in the academic sector of the university. Because I mean, you saw all the postseason bans, you saw the practice restrictions. Any parent would be like, why would I send my child there? But at the end of the day, we convinced some really good football players to come there that were not only good football players. We're talking about guys that graduated in the top of their class. We even had a valedictorian that was there, man, that graduated at the top. And you know, Contavious Preston's graduated at the top of the business program. Danny Johnson had a high GPA. Aaron Tiller had a high. We just changed and just went and found guys that want to come, that met the academic criteria that we was looking for to help change our APR. And those guys bought into what we were selling, and they worked their butts off. And the rest is history. We ended up turning the program around. We ended up having a lot of success, even though we didn't have a lot of things that other people had during that time. It was a good fight. It was a good run. And it was the most challenging thing that I probably have ever had to endure. But we did it together. And that's the only way I think you can overcome any form of adversity that you have. You got to stay prayed up, and you got to have good people in your corner that's willing to fight with you. And during those times, we had some good people in our corner that was fighting with us.
What'd you learn as a coach, especially dealing with APR? Because I'm sure if you didn't really know about it before, this woke you up, because I remember hearing the stories. It was like before games, hey, because we saw it at FAMU. Hey, this guy can't play. This guy can't play. You know, and you learning this just on the fly. What did you learn about yourself as a coach, and more importantly about this whole APR thing that all makes this whole NCAA work and having your players eligible and ready for games?
Well, you got to be willing to adjust, and you need to ask those questions before you accept the job and know what you're walking into. You got to think some of these guys that have taken these jobs, these APR issues came out after they had been there, so they probably had no idea that it was that bad. And you setting them up, because if they don't have winning success on the field, you're not looking at the lack of practice time. You're not looking at the postseason bans and how that affects. You're looking at wins and losses, and it has a tremendous effect on your program. That's why anybody that has won doing those type of penalties understand that you got to be patient, and it take time because it's going to be tough to overcome that. So that's why the resources are there. They have grants in place that you can apply for from the NCAA to try to get your academic sector of the world up to speed so that you can be able to maneuver in a way that keeps your APR above 930, because once it goes below and you start receiving all the negativity that comes with it, from practice reductions, from postseason ban, from no spring practice, you end up really, really costing the community, and it makes recruiting really difficult.
Explain what it is like not to have spring practice, spring football, because, in this world that we live in, people, take a lot of things for granted, but for you guys, and with the reduction of practice time and everything else, not being able to recruit, what is that like, literally, as the guy leading the program saying, we got to develop, but I got limited time to develop?
I think it's challenging because you don't want to go from August to August, before you put pads on. So you got these new guys coming in that didn't play as much. So the spring ball is not for the guys can play. You know what they can do. It's for them to polish their fundamental skills, but it's for these other guys that you're counting on to get a lot of work and really develop and get some chance to learn the system, participate in the system, and just home in on their skills. And then you start finding out what kind of football team you have. And then you start seeing, okay, no, I don't know about this guy. We may need to go recruit this guy. Let's look in portal in May and see if we can find some more additions. You find a lot about your football team. Well, during our time, we didn't have a portal, but we weren't able to find out a lot about the football team because you didn't have pads. So you had to really trust the skill set of the guys that you were recruiting and really building that around those guys' skill set, and just going out there and getting the right group of guys with the right mindset. And that's really what we shifted. We shifted the mindset of the guys that we were bringing in, and those guys were awesome, man. I couldn't wish that on nobody. Not 1 year of spring ball, you can overcome it. But 3-4 years in a row, I don't know how I don't even know how we did it. Because it's and people probably listen to this and don't even, they had that, no spring ball. And it was just challenging because we figured it out and you made a way. We didn't make excuses, just the hand that was dealt. But I'm telling you, the people that are in your corner are the reason why you have so much success. And if those people ain't in your corner or real and true to the program that you're running, I don't care who you are, you can't have success. Everybody has to be on the same page and have the buy-in. One group, academics can't be pulling in one way, compliance can't be pulling in one way, administration can't be pulling in one way. Everybody has to be on the same page, man. And when we went through that APR crisis at Southern, we got on the same page. And once we got on the same page, it wasn't what we don't have. It was what can we do? How can we operate? What, coach, you can't do this, you can do this. Coach, you can't do this, you can do this. Coach, we can't take him, coach. His GPA ain't gonna help us. Okay, coach, you can get one that's got a bad GPA, but we can't get 5. So you start putting a plan together to say, okay, coach, when you come in here with this GPA, he don't need to become my engineer. So we got on the same page with what we was doing and how we was doing it. And that's the biggest thing too, is that some guys come in thinking they're engineers, business majors, want to be doctors, and they're coming out of high school and they GPA 2.4. I'm not saying you can't be a doctor, but I'm saying the proof is in the pudding. Okay, you're not showing me doctor skills. So either something needs to change with you, or we need to change what you're doing. But it got to marry up. And I think when you do that, it makes a big difference.
That's funny to me because that's the reality of the world. And I was talking about that before the show. You have your, as we started the show, you'll have your mind set up on something to be one way, but then, hey, sometimes you got to pivot and go another way. It don't always go the way we think it's going to go.
Yeah, 100% on that.